Good afternoon. Welcome to Kopernik's Livestream and the conclusion of the Crew Dragon Demo-2 mission with Southern Tier native Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. We are going to very quickly switch over to our live feed from NASA. We're under 4 minutes away from the Deorbit burn, and so we'll get you plugged into that, and look forward to seeing some chat. So when you have a moment, have any questions or anything to say, put it in the chat window. Looking forward to a really exciting and successful conclusion to the mission here. So let's go to our program.
Really pick up. This is where we really commit to coming home, and this is where we're in kind of the final stages of Doug's trip in outer space. Pretty soon we'll be seeing them in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, well, they are staying comfortable and continuing to monitor data and telemetry in the vehicle. Dragon is actually doing a couple of things itself to prepare for this deorbit sequence. Again, it's doing these things autonomously. It's isolating the thermal control system loops from the radiator. This is the system that will help keep Bob and Doug cool while they are re-entering the atmosphere. Like we've said before, the external temperature will reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and that thermal control system is what helps keep them cool during that time. Also, Dragon is initiating the separation of the claw mechanism, which will terminate the data, the power, and the fluid connections between the capsule and the trunk. So right now, the vehicle is preparing to execute that, and we are anticipating execution of claw separation in 3 minutes and 35 seconds. So, you know, we've been here for 10 hours, I think, at this point. The webcast as a whole has been going on for almost a little bit less than 24 hours. So, you know, we're in the final moments here as Dragon is beginning its journey home to bring Bob and Doug back to Earth.
Yeah, this is the moment that Dragon is in the position to start coming home. The recovery team's already on station. They have been for a while out there off the coast of Pensacola. We are less than a minute from starting all of these carefully choreographed sequences to essentially split Dragon in half, get rid of that trunk so we have the capsule, point the heat shield back down towards Earth following that deorbit burn, and then we bring them home. We are just about 30 seconds away now from maneuvering Dragon to get ready to get rid of that claw first, and then that trunk separation. There will be about a 35-second difference or 35-second jump from separating the claw to separating the trunk, and we'll keep our eyes on the ground track for you and make sure we get kind of exact locations of when these separation events are occurring. We're looking for both the claw and the trunk to separate cleanly, and then it'll be less than 5 minutes until we do the deorbit burn.
Yeah, and after that, it'll...
Dragon SpaceX, deorbit sequence start.
All right.
Great news.
Never copied.
Here we go.
All right, so the Draco thrusters on Dragon starting to fire. It's now moving its way over to the trunk jettison attitude. We should be about 2 minutes away from the claw separation.
For those of you that are just tuning in, you are just in time. At this point in the mission, we are now beginning to execute the final steps of Dragon Endeavor's return to Earth. Right now, we are performing the claw separation slew, which basically means Dragon is maneuvering itself into position, into the proper attitude in order to separate the Dragon trunk. And that will be initiated first by separation of the claw. The claw is the mechanism that attaches the trunk and the capsule together. The claw is what delivers power and telemetry and fluids, and we need to expose the heat shield Right now the trunk is blocking that. So we will jettison the trunk, and we will then have allow us to maneuver into the proper attitude to perform the deorbit burn, which Dragon has performed a number of burns so far overnight and early this morning, and this will be the final burn that the vehicle has to perform for this mission.
And we just heard confirmation Dragon's in the trunk separation attitude. We are now standing by for claw separation.
And we just heard confirmation of claw sep.
And with the claws separated, we're now standing by for the trunk separation in less than 30 seconds. Ten seconds till trunk separation.
And we just heard confirmation of trunk separation.
The trunk separation coming at 10:52 a.m. Pacific, with Dragon flying over the Indian Ocean just off to the west of Australia.
Dragon SpaceX, we showed nominal trunk jettison.
Oh yeah, we felt it.
All right. So the crew just got the call, nominal trunk separation. That's exactly what we were looking for. Next up is going to be that deorbit burn. Again, this is the longest burn of their trip home. This is the longest firing of those thrusters, and the last time we're using those forward bulkhead thrusters.
Exactly. Those forward bulkhead thrusters, like Dan just said, that's what we're using to perform the deorbit burn. Once we do that, we will then be able, that deorbit burn will last for 11.5 minutes. Once that is completed, we don't need to use those thrusters anymore, so we will close and lock the nose cone in preparation for re-entry.
So we're a little under 3.5 minutes from the start of the deorbit burn. Again, our sequence of events has started. We're able to separate that claw at 10:51 a.m. Pacific. It's 17:51 GMT or Universal Time. And then at 10:52, just a minute later, the trunk separating while Dragon was flying just off to the west of Australia. So claw separated, trunk separated. Next up, deorbit burn.
Yeah, right now, Dragon is running exclusively on battery power now that the trunk is separated. Also, right now, telemetry is looking really good for the vehicle. The nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield is exposed and ready for atmospheric re-entry. Like I said before, that nitrox system, which is essentially the air that we breathe every day down here on Earth, nitrogen-oxygen combination, a mixture. It's the same stuff that they put in your scuba tank if you are a scuba diver. The nitrox system is used to cool the cabin and the suit to keep the crew comfortable during the re-entry phase. They will actually have cold air flowing through their suits themselves, as well as through the cabin itself. So a two-pronged approach to maintaining a comfortable temperature there inside the capsule. Like we said, the next event that we have coming up will be the deorbit burn, which we're expecting that to commence in 1 minute and 40 seconds. According to the ground tracking map there, Dragon is approaching the southwestern coast of Australia. We are less than a...
We're excited.
Jinx.
We are inside a minute to deorbit burn. And again, one more time, this is the long one. This is expected to last 11 minutes, 22 seconds. This is that burn that commits the Dragon to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And you can get kind of a sense of just how far they're going to go. By the time they fire this burn, they're just going to be off to the southwest of Australia. And this is going to realign their orbit to intersect with that point off the coast of Pensacola where they're going to be splashing down.
Yeah, this is the moment where Dragon is fully committed to the reentry point. Again, we are aiming for just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. Our recovery ship Go Navigator is ready and waiting to begin the recovery process right after splashdown occurs. Once again, if you're just joining us, we are now in the final steps of the deorbit sequence. The deorbit burn will be starting here in just a couple of seconds.
And we just heard confirmation deorbit burn has begun. That coming at 10:56 a.m. Pacific. Again, while the Dragon spacecraft just off the southwestern coast of Australia. So here we go. 11 more minutes to go.
I'm ready, and I'm sure it's safe to say that Bob and Doug are ready. They've done a number of interviews over the last few weeks while they were on station, and just the excitement and the enthusiasm for the mission is palpable. Just the opportunity to be able to fly these two incredible humans to the International Space Station and back is such an honor, and we're just really excited to get our space dads home safely and back to their families as quickly as possible. This deorbit burn that we are currently in, it will last 11 minutes and 22 seconds.
Already a little more than a minute 10 in counting, so we have about 10 minutes to go. Just heard a call. The propulsion system performing nominally. That's the word we always want to hear. We always like to hear. So just under 10 minutes to go left in this burn.
And all within the last 10 minutes, again, it seemed like we had slow progress of events all morning, and then boom, within the last 10 minutes we had a couple of things happening. Dragon maneuvered itself into the appropriate position to jettison its trunk, and it did so successfully, nominally, and then it initiated the deorbit burn just a couple minutes ago. Like I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time those 4 forward Draco thrusters will fire, forward kind of meaning at the top of the capsule. Dragon Endeavour has not yet entered Earth's atmosphere, but this deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site in the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, although we can't see it at the moment, Bob and Doug are using their screens to keep tabs on the burn duration, Draco thruster firings, and trajectory details such as entry angle, capsule perigee, and how much distance is remaining until that deorbit burn terminates. So Dragon is flying itself, so all they really have to do is stay strapped in their seats and keep tabs on things. So while this burn is completing, again, we're just a few minutes into it. It'll last 11 minutes and 22 seconds. We have a couple more events coming up afterward. In let me check my timeline here real quick. In just under 44 minutes, we will have the initial parachute deployment. So that is essentially when we will be deploying the drogue parachutes, the small parachutes that are designed to further slow down the capsule as it is re-entering the atmosphere, as well as stabilizing it. And then a minute after that, we will deploy the drogue parachutes, and that is targeted for 11:44 a.m. Pacific, 18:44 Universal. And then just a couple minutes after that, we will have Splashdown. So again, that's all in just under 44 minutes. Right now, we are performing the Deorbit burn.
We've got a little over 7 minutes left in this burn. And the only performance call we've gotten so far is everything's still looking good with the propulsion system on Dragon. Once this burn completes, we will have kind of a couple minutes, about 3 minutes to catch our breath before things pick right back up and we get the nose cone closed. And then there'll be a bit more of a gap, and at that point they will maneuver Dragon to its entry attitude, essentially heat shield pointed down and into the line of velocity, and that heat shield protecting them from the heat of reentry. Temperatures getting up to about 3,500 degrees on the Dragon spacecraft, but everything looking good. We're about 5 minutes into this deorbit burn. Again, it started right at 10:56 a.m. Pacific time, 17:56 GMT. Dragon was flying about 260 statute miles just off the southwestern coast of Australia.
So right now, during this burn, we just heard a call that we're halfway through the burn and everything is looking great, everything performing nominally. During this burn right now, Bob and Doug are currently monitoring the Deorbit tool, which, like I said earlier, captures things like the perigee, the reentry interface, how much distance remains before the burn itself is terminated. They're also monitoring the burn duration and the firing of those Draco thrusters located there at on the forward bulkhead of the capsule. There on your screen, you actually can see what Bob and Doug are seeing right now. That is that tool on their screen. So on the left and the right of the center screen, that is the Deorbit. That is the Deorbit monitoring tool.
Just past 7 minutes into the burn, a little over 4 minutes remaining. Everything's still looking good with Dragon Ship Endeavour's deorbit burn to commit it to coming home. Everything continuing to be on track for our splashdown. Again, our splashdown time right at 11:48 and 24 seconds Pacific was the calculated time. It would be typical if we're a couple seconds on either side. But that time is 18:48 GMT or Universal. But we're already through several of the really major steps to initiate this re-entry. The claw is separated, the trunk is gone, the deorbit burn has begun, and we're more than halfway through, just a little under 3.5 minutes remaining.
There on your screen is a shot of our Mission Control Center here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, where the Dragon operators and mission leaders are there monitoring Dragon's progress. They continue to watch the propulsion data and all the GNC data, making sure that everything is looking healthy and nominal.
We're just about 2 minutes, 30 seconds until the end of this burn. We'll listen for the call out up to the crew on the performance of the burn, and then they'll start moving into the next steps. Again, we'll get about a 3-minute breather before the next major milestone comes up when we get ready to close the nose cone, that protecting the docking ring, guidance, navigation, and control sensors, and also these 4 forward bulkhead thrusters that are currently performing the deorbit burn during the actual reentry process. So we are at just under 2 minutes from the conclusion of the deorbit burn.
Again, Dragon is committed to its splashdown point. There is no going back.
Yeah, we already have the recovery team ready and on standby. They've been there for quite some time now. Here, and we have about 90 seconds left in the burn. Weather looking great at the splashdown site off Pensacola. Winds just around 2.5 miles per hour. Sea being described as like glass by the Corps here in Hawthorne, radioing up to the crew. Ended up getting fantastic weather for this first crewed splashdown of Dragon. We are 1 minute away from the end of deorbit burn.
Again, this burn is placing Dragon on its final trajectory to the landing site off of the coast of Pensacola, Florida. That is in the Gulf of Mexico. And our recovery vessel, Go Navigator, and the recovery team are ready and waiting to see Bob and Doug come back through the atmosphere. Like we said, this deorbit burn, during this deorbit burn, not re-entering the atmosphere just yet. That won't happen for about or touchdowns.
We're getting a little bit of choppiness. It's not clear exactly if that's the NASA feed or our feed. I'll see what I can do to try to work on that.
Dragon, SpaceX, deorbit burn complete, performance nominal, nose cone closure initiated.
Final burn, nose cone and burn.
Looks like our feed is back again.
Deorbit burn complete. We heard the call. Nominal burn. Bob and Doug are on their way back home. This burn commits them to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. All we have left now is to wait. That was really one of the last major moments before they start re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. We'll have the nose cone closure coming up next. That should be coming in just a couple of minutes, as we had about a 3-minute span between the end of the deorbit burn and that moment.
Yeah, the nose cone is actually currently in the closing process, so it doesn't just snap shut. It does slowly close and lock. So right now, that nose cone is in the process of moving back into the closed position, and we will hear the call out for whenever it has fully closed and whenever the latches have secured.
Seeing some data, it looks like it's about halfway there. It's opened a little bit more than 90 degrees. I think the exact count was 110 degrees opening range or range of motion for the nose cone. So we're a little more than halfway now to getting that nose cone closed.
So I have just heard that we have a visual on nose cone closure. So it'll take a minute for the hooks to close in. They close in a series, so the first series will close and then the second will follow, and that'll take about a minute to complete.
All right, well, as we just wait for the finish to that nose cone closure, we'll have a bit of time again. We'll have about 20 minutes, or a little over 21 from right now, until we really start re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. We're expecting that entry interface in about 21 minutes. And then right around that time, we'll also be looking for that blackout we've been talking about. We've had a little bit of what we call radicom at this point, so you'll hear kind of some sporadic interruptions in the audio transmission just because of how Dragon was oriented for the trunk jettison and for the actual deorbit burn. But that blackout period will be due to the plasma that builds up around the capsule, interfering with those antennas either sending or receiving data.
Yeah, if you're watching one of our live streams here for the first time,
So
we
I've heard
invite
the
you
call
to...
out that the first set of hooks for nose cone closure are in motion.
To hit subscribe.
This will complete in 2 sets. The first set is now in motion, so really good news to hear that. Everything looking good so far. Like I mentioned before, in the background, Dragon has inhibited the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete that deorbit burn. This is to ensure that it's safe to latch that nose cone shut for reentry. Also, the vehicle has initiated the nitrox purge. Nitrox is simply a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. It's what we breathe, and the nitrox that is being purged into the system is cooled, so allowing that cool air to circulate around the cabin, but also inside of Bob and Doug's suits will help to keep them cool and comfortable during re-entry, which will be coming up in about 20 minutes. We're currently tracking 23 minutes and 20 seconds until entry begins. So in case you're just joining us at this point, the nose cone has closed. The forward thrusters have been disabled, and we are latching the nose cone. Currently underway with the first set of hooks, the first of 2 sets. And we just had confirmation that the first set of hooks is closed, so now the second set will begin to close as well.
As we mentioned, after this nose cone's fully closed, we'll have a couple of minutes to catch our breath again, about 20 minutes or just under 20 minutes until Dragon will start to maneuver itself to the entry attitude, essentially pointing the heat shield in the direction of travel as it's going to be leading the way through their reentry through the Earth's atmosphere. We'll look to run into that communications blackout at about 36 minutes after the hour, expecting that to last for about 6 minutes, and then we'll get that back shortly before we deploy the drogue parachutes, followed just less than a minute later by the main parachutes, and by that point hopefully we should have some views of Dragon re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and parachuting to a splashdown in the Gulf.
So there in the front row of Mission Control in the center, you can see CEO Elon Musk and our President Gwen Shotwell sitting side by side at those center consoles. In addition to those two, the room is filled with Dragon operators and mission leaders who are continuing to monitor the health and telemetry of the crew and the capsule. Right now, nose cone closure is underway. The first of 2 sets of hook latching has completed. And we just heard a call out that the nose
SpaceX nose cone is secure for entry.
Copy. We see it on board.
All right, great confirmation there. Back and forth from Mission Control here to Bob and Doug up in Dragon Endeavour. That Bob and Doug have also confirmed on their displays that the nose cone has closed nominally and it is secure for entry.
All right, so that nose cone close completion. A lot of tongue twisters with this right now. Coming with Dragon still flying over the South Pacific. It is on its way home. We're going to gradually start to see its altitude dip. Right now, already only 207 miles over the Earth's surface. It was at about 260 miles when it was still over on the other side of the Pacific Ocean off the southwestern coast of Australia when it fired its engines for that deorbit burn. So its altitude going to continue to drop. Once it gets to about 100 kilometers in altitude, or about 62 miles, it's going to begin what's known as entry interface. And that's when it really begins to start to feel the effects of the Earth's atmosphere. Will once again be experiencing lift and drag as it's no longer in that near vacuum environment in low Earth orbit.
So we're essentially stepping into the second half of entry. Dragon is now beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continuing to top it off in Bob and Doug's suits as well. Again, this is cool air essentially flowing through the cabin and the suits. This is what will allow them and the cabin itself to remain comfortable during reentry while those external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point in time, Dragon's orientation is such that the heat shield is pointing forward, if you will, leading the capsule toward the landing site. If you've been following along over the last couple days, you know that weather has been a big ticket item for us. The recovery team has been busy over the last week working to determine the selection of a landing site. In order to increase the options for space station departures, the team identified a total of 7 possible splashdown locations. In order to meet NASA's timeline requirements for crew recovery, these potential splashdown locations have to be close to a port, and they have to be close to medical facilities. So with all of that in mind, you add the ever-evolving weather conditions of Florida, but also that tropical storm Isaiah that was moving through. And it's easy to see how determining that landing site is quite a complex process. Since Dragon is capable of splashdown on either side of the Florida Panhandle, we in fact have 2 identical and fully equipped recovery vessels ready to support. One in the Gulf of Mexico, which is what we're utilizing today, Go Navigator, and the other located off the east coast of Florida, able to service landing sites in the Atlantic Ocean. That one is Go Searcher. Like I mentioned, today we'll be splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. Go Navigator, that recovery ship I just mentioned, is in place and ready and waiting for Bob and Doug. The WB-57 plane, if it hasn't taken off already, I'm sure it will be very soon.
It's in the air.
Okay, great. That's what will provide our first views of Dragon during reentry. We'll get a thermal cam off of that airplane, allowing us to see the capsule as it is reentering the atmosphere. if you were tuned in for our Demo-1 broadcast, it was basically a big ball of light coming at us. We'll also have cameras on board the recovery vessel, so as Dragon gets closer and is deploying those parachutes, we will also be able to have hopefully some really clear footage of that all occurring as well.
All right, so Dragon's altitude continuing to dip. Right now about 174 miles over planet Earth. We're under 11.5 minutes from where we expect to hit entry interface. So that's where Dragon will really start feeling the effects of being in a denser atmosphere. And then we are still tracking that blackout to come right around that same time. We are under 27 minutes away from Splashdown. So we are under 27 minutes away from Bob and Doug being on planet Earth for the first time since May 30th.
To kind of put everything in perspective, the Dragon capsule departed from the International Space Station several hours ago, but according to what Dan just said, it's essentially halfway home just based on altitude alone. So the International Space Station is about 250 miles above Earth's surface. I think right now it's between 250 and 300. I think right now it's about 263 miles above Earth's surface. So based on that telemetry that Dan just read off, is from an altitude standpoint, Dragon is halfway home, and yet that second half is going to be covered in the next 27-ish minutes while we wait for splashdown and recovery, versus the several hours that we've been covering since yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will continue to see its speed drop as it's dropping out of orbit. It's starting to hit the atmosphere. It's starting to slow from the effects of that friction, generating the heat on the heat shield and building up the plasma eventually around the spacecraft. Its speed's going to continue to drop. It's already below 17,000 miles an hour, and it'll drop to essentially a terminal velocity of about 350 miles an hour right as those drogue chutes deploy. And those are going to pop out when sensors on the Dragon spacecraft, both GPS and pressure sensors, tell the spacecraft it's at the right altitude, and then those will automatically deploy. Those drogues coming out of the top section of the spacecraft using two mortars, or pyrotechnics essentially, to deploy those to do the initial slowing and stabilizing of the Dragon capsule.
Yeah, then after that, the main parachutes will pop out and further decelerate it to about 119 miles per hour. And then that will continue to decelerate. And by the time that the capsule is splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico, it's only going 15, 16 miles per hour. So significant reduction in speed there over just the course of a couple minutes. That, of course, is a pretty comfortable speed. The way that the astronauts have described it previously with other types of missions also landing down, doing land landings at about the same rate. They said it feels like you're in a minor fender bender.
Yeah, you're definitely running into something. You'll feel it, but they do a lot of work with the seats and the restraints with these crew members just to make sure, while it may be a fender bender, you got more than a seatbelt essentially holding you in. So they're very secure in their suits and in their seats, and they're going to stay in there even after Dragon touches down. We'll still have communication with Dragon. Once they're in the water, it'll stay powered on. Probably most importantly, the air conditioner will continue to work while they're in the capsule in the now Gulf of Mexico, and much warmer temperatures than they've seen for the last couple of months. And we'll still be able to talk to them from here in Hawthorne, and the recovery teams will be able to as well.
Yeah.
One of the things we might see them do, depending on sea states and everything after they touch down and the crew themselves, they'll still have a couple of demonstration tasks potentially to carry out. They have a satellite phone inside of the capsule that has its own satellite antenna integrated into Dragon, and they're able to use that independent of Dragon's communication system. So one thing we might hear them do is do a test call on that to the teams here in Hawthorne. We wouldn't be able to hear the call, but you would hear the go to do it over the Dragon to ground audio that we've been listening to this entire time. So Still have a couple of demonstration steps, essentially, as, again, this is a test flight. This is the flight to really prove out Dragon systems, to bring crew members from Kennedy Space Center to the space station and return them safely to Earth. And so far, we have had a flawless ride downhill. We've completed the deorbit burn. Dragon is continuing to drop down. It's right now at about 132 miles over the Pacific Ocean. Pretty soon we're going to see its ground track cross over Central America, out over the Gulf, culminating in that splashdown in the Gulf just off the coast of Pensacola.
Dragon SpaceX for entry brief.
Go ahead.
Okay, Doug, we have no update to timing because the burn went great and your vehicle is still looking really good for entry. No health issues at this time.
Okay, Dragon copies. Thank you.
In addition, the recovery team is go, and the weather is still great. Winds are about 2 knots and waves about 1 foot. From the ship, they're reporting very calm. How copy?
Copy. Good weather at the landing area. Thank you.
Okay, and last piece is that we do expect some additional RADICOM during entry prep 2 due to vehicle attitude. So if you can get us your entry check report a little bit prior to entry prep 2, we'd appreciate it.
Copy. We'll go.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
So there we just had a bit of a briefing between Mission Control and Bob and Doug up in Crew Endeavor. Just confirming with them that the deorbit burn was great and that the timing on their pads doesn't need to be updated. We are able to upload new trajectory calculations, including times that remain live depending on how the burn goes, and at this point in time, those don't need to be updated. It is important that they do remain accurate because Bob and Doug, their primary mission right now is to continue to monitor the vehicle status and telemetry and data being presented to them on their touchscreen displays in front of them, and so during the more dynamic events, they certainly want to be aware when things like parachute deploy will be happening and when splashdown is expected. So making sure that the timeline of events, the sequencing is accurate is certainly important in order for them to stay aware and updated of upcoming events.
Just another quick position check. Dragon still out over the Central Pacific, down to about 108 miles in altitude. We're expecting that entry interface to come up in the next 4 minutes or so. Again, at that point, Dragon should be at an altitude of right around 62 statute miles, or about 100 kilometers, and that's when it really starts to feel the effects of the atmosphere. It starts to experience the lift and drag and other atmospheric effects it's been free from while flying in the near vacuum of low Earth orbit. So continuing to drop in altitude, still looking for an on-time splashdown. Should just be about 19 minutes from now. And just a reminder, we do have that blackout period coming. So as they continue to dip in the Earth's atmosphere and get lower and lower, the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker and is going to generate more and more heat, eventually heating up the outside of Dragon to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And as it hits that peak heating, it'll also be forming a plasma around the spacecraft. So we do expect to lose comm for about 6 minutes.
SpaceX Dragon crew entry preps are complete.
SpaceX copies. Entry prep complete. Thank you.
The call from Spacecraft Commander Doug Hurley. Entry preps are complete. So they are on board, they are monitoring, they are ready to come home.
Yeah, and as of right now, entry prep should have also included final configuration of their flight suits. So we had a question from our social media earlier if the visors will be up or down. Those visors should be down at this point as part of that entry prep check. In that last briefing, we also heard that the weather is looking good. In a previous report, the phrasing was, "It looks like glass." And that is certainly ideal for a water splashdown. That being said, the recovery timeline, Bob and Doug should be out of the capsule within an hour after splashing down. So good to hear that the weather is good. We saw blue skies and a couple of white fluffy clouds out there in the Gulf of Mexico as we got views from our recovery vessel Go Navigator. But glad to hear that conditions are sustaining and that winds also are looking really good, around 2.5 miles per hour. So hardly anything at all. Really couldn't ask for better conditions for a splashdown day.
We kind of threaded the needle once again, almost like we did on launch with the weather today. Your upper limits for wind were about 10 miles an hour, so we're well below that threshold for a splashdown today. The Dragon coming up on 82 miles in altitude, continuing to dip down. We're expecting that entry interface to start pretty soon, where the vehicle itself's really going to start heating up. It's going to continue to use its Draco thrusters to maintain its attitude as it continues through the Earth's atmosphere, and we'll have that calm blackout coming up in just a couple of minutes as well. The cabin purge has started again. This is when they're going to flush the cabin of Dragon with cooled air. They're also going to do a suit purge, running cooled nitrox through the suits for Bob and Doug just to keep things at a comfortable temperature for them as the capsule goes through the reentry and starts to heat up.
Like we said, we are anticipating a brief blackout period where we're unable to communicate with the capsule. We're expecting that to start in exactly 3 minutes. That will last for 6 minutes total, and during that time we will be unable to command the vehicle or receive telemetry. That being said, Dragon is designed to be fully autonomous, so it's driving itself anyway. So Bob and Doug will stay fastened in their seats. Like I said, that anticipated loss of signal, or as you'll hear it called LOS, is anticipated to last for just 6 minutes. During that blackout period, the capsule will encounter what's known as entry interface. This is when the capsule is now really in the Earth's atmosphere and beginning to be subject to aerodynamic forces. This is also when a lot of that friction will begin to build up and raise the external temperatures.
Dragon SpaceX, we show 2 minutes until predicted calm blackout. We will see you on the other side at 1842.
Dragon copies 1842. We'll talk to you then.
So there's that heads up communication from Mission Control to Dragon Endeavour, confirming that comms blackout. Like I was saying, during the blackout, the Dragon capsule will be going through entry interface, where it is encountering aerodynamic forces, really starting to build up the external temperature and that external temperature will reach about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the interior of the cabin is environmentally cooled, so Bob and Doug should remain comfortable during their descent. There will be cool air flowing not only through the cabin itself, but also through their suits. The suits have sensors on them that are able to detect the temperature inside that suit, and once that sensor reads that it has reached the maximum temperature threshold, it'll flush the suit with some cool air and really circulate and cool it down.
All right, well, So we are right around that estimated blackout time. As we heard the call, we'll see them on the other side, expected to regain that communication at about 42 minutes after the hour. So for these next 6 minutes, they're already less than 60 miles in altitude. And this is when the capsule is really heating up during that reentry, reaching temperatures of around 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As again, you're essentially hitting the atmosphere more than 17,000 miles an hour, and the friction building up that plasma around the spacecraft. And that's what's going to prevent us from talking to Bob and Doug or getting data back from the spacecraft for the next 6 minutes. Its flight computers are in control, though. It's going to continue to maintain its appropriate trajectory and attitude, having attitude determination devices on board the capsule, not reliant on communications with satellites. And it's going to continue dragging down the correct path for this splashdown off the coast of Pensacola. So we are in that blackout period. We're going to continue to stand by until we get them on the other side. All right, and just about 2 minutes after we get acquisition of signal, AOS, back with Dragon, we're going to be looking for those parachutes, and we should hopefully be getting some views from a couple of our assets out at the landing zone, including our WB-57 high-altitude research plane, which is going to be relying on Dragon's telemetry to actually lock onto it in the sky and give us an infrared view of the capsule during the final stages of reentry. We're going to be looking for the drogue deploys at about 44 minutes after the hour. Those will be 2 drogue chutes that are going to come out when the vehicle is still moving at about 350 miles an hour. And it'll be at an altitude of about 18,000 feet. They'll come out and do some initial slowing and stabilization of the spacecraft, and then less than a minute later, they'll detach, and the 4 main parachutes will deploy. You'll see them come out and look kind of closed up initially, and then they'll do what's known as reefing, opening up in really 2 different stages just to minimize the immediate loads on the parachutes themselves. Those main parachutes will come out at an altitude of about 6,500 feet, with Dragon already slowed down to 119 miles an hour, and they'll do the rest of the slowing the whole way down until we splash down in the Gulf of Mexico. We should be 10 minutes away from splashdown.
So right now we're getting our cameras on the WB-57 airplane, which is in the area, getting those cameras ready to give us our first glimpse.
And we should still have about 3 minutes left, a little less than 3 minutes, until we anticipate reacquiring our signal and our connection with Bob and Doug in the Dragon spacecraft.
If you're just tuning in, we are in a blackout period that we were expecting. This blackout period will last a total of 6 minutes, and we're about halfway through there now. At the moment, Dragon is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and due to the plasma building up on the exterior of the vehicle, we're unable to communicate or send commands, but Dragon is fully autonomous. It is steering itself, and right now Bob and Doug are flying home.
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
So we're still inside that anticipated blackout window. It does look like we are getting maybe some sporadic data starting to peek through. This is why you heard that communications check with the spacecraft.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Dr. has you loud and clear. We're about 3.9 G.
Copy. We've got you 5x5 as well, Doug. Looking good, and you can expect an automated chute deployment.
Copy. It'll chute deployment.
All right, really good news there. We have come out of the blackout period and we have reestablished connection with Dragon Endeavour with NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on board.
We were able to reacquire that communication a little bit earlier than expected, and now we are just waiting. We should just be about 2.5 minutes away from that initial drogue chute deploy.
Yeah, 2 minutes and 26 seconds.
AGPS has converged.
Copy that.
You may have heard earlier that Bob and Doug are currently experiencing 3.5 Gs. Not too bad. That's about what they pulled during the ascent phase. Just like a mild roller coaster. So the vehicle is now over the Gulf of Mexico. It is approaching the landing zone off the coast of Florida near Pensacola. And there we have our first shot.
There it is. The first view from the WB-57 airplane. It is dipping in and out a little bit. This is going to be an infrared camera showing us Dragon re-entering. We have that comm back with Bob and Doug. You heard AGPS is converging. Dragon has 3 GPS units that it uses actually in the parachute deployment process as it helps along with the pressure sensors really give a solid altitude to the flight computers on when these are supposed to deploy. And we're standing by for the drogue chute deployments. We should be just under 5 minutes away from splashdown.
Passing 15 kilometers, brace for drogue window.
Copy, we're braced.
Just about 14 kilometers in altitude, 8.4 miles, continuing to descend.
There on your screen, we have a shot of the capsule as it is preparing to deploy those initial parachutes, the drogue parachutes. Again, these parachutes help slow the vehicle down even further and help stabilize in preparation for main chute deployment. Right about now, the capsule is going about 400 miles per hour, decelerating quickly.
And standing by for drogue deploys.
Visual, 2 drogues out.
There on your screen, we have visual confirmation of those 2 drogue deployments.
Copy, 2 drogue.
All right, so 2 of 2, the drogues now out. They're going to do their slowing and stabilizing of the Dragon spacecraft. They should be detaching in just a few moments, and then we'll see 4 parachutes, the main parachutes deployed. Dragon under drogues.
Drogue descent rate nominal.
So the expected descent rate, the expected velocity under the drogues nominal. We're right at around 150 miles an hour and already dropping. You can see the drogues now detach.
And there we have confirmation of deployment of the 4 main parachutes.
We are visual on 4 chutes out.
We are visual. 4 main parachutes deployed.
Copy, 4 main.
So at this point, the main parachutes have deployed. They are inflating, as you can see there on your screen, continuing to slow Dragon down significantly. We are anticipating splashdown in just under 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
And we've already slowed the vehicle down to about 16 miles an hour. It's already less than a kilometer in altitude.
Main chute descent rate nominal, passing through 700 meters.
So at this point, Dragon has saved all propulsion systems on
600
board.
meters.
600 meters.
And we're 600 meters above the Gulf of Mexico.
Should be approximately a minute 30 from splashdown.
Mission control team here in Hawthorne has reported the precise landing coordinates to the recovery team. They are standing by, ready to go get our space dads.
100 meters.
Just passed about 300 meters. 1 minute till splashdown.
$200 meters. We are braced for splashdown.
Copy, brace for splashdown.
So there we heard Bob and Doug reporting that they are bracing for a splashdown. We should be able to see the Gulf of Mexico here in the shot just momentarily, as we're now just about 20 meters off the ocean.
Splashdown.
As you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation for splashdown.
SpaceX copies and concurs. We see splashdown and mains cut.
Dragon Endeavour has returned home. NASA astronauts Bob and Doug.
On behalf of the SpaceX and NASA teams, welcome back to planet Earth, and thanks for flying SpaceX.
It was truly our honor and privilege to fly in flight of the Crew Dragon and Endeavour. Congratulations, everybody at SpaceX. All good, and we're into section of 4.800.
Thanks for those words, Doug, and we copy that you are into 4.800.
So great news all around there. Our space dads are back on Earth after a 19-hour return journey from space. Dragon Endeavour has splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. And on your screen there, you can see our two fast boats, and they are indeed fast, racing out to greet Dragon Endeavour as it sits there. The first on there, we can see a view inside the capsule. Bob and Doug looking good. Although the communication was a little choppy, we did hear...
Endeavour in 3.1, we show ourselves in stable 1.
And SpaceX copies for vehicle assessment, step 3.1, stable 1. Good news.
Stable 1, essentially, they're upright in the water. Stable 2, also another potential where it could be on its side or even upside down, but Dragon does have a water ballast system to keep it upright, where it's able to essentially pump seawater into bladders in the service section of the capsule. But they're upright. We already see the fast boats approaching. They touched down, came right on time at 11:48 a.m. Pacific, 1848 UTC. Bob and Doug now in the water, and the recovery ops, they've already begun. We already see the fast boats starting to move in. We're still maintaining that good communication back with Bob and Doug and the team here in Hawthorne. Pretty soon we should be getting the go for them to move in, begin their hypergol sniffs, and begin wrangling up those parachutes. But we can see Bob and Doug inside the capsule back on planet Earth.
Yeah, those fast boats will be moving in to do a couple of things. They'll be performing what's known as a sniffer test. That's essentially to ensure that the air around the vehicle doesn't have any toxic fumes from the hypergolic propellants on board. So once we get the all clear from there, the water recovery lead will give the go for approach, and that's when the first fast boat will actually approach the capsule. Hopefully give a little wave to Bob and Doug through the window. And one of the team members will actually climb on top of Crew Dragon and begin to place the rigging equipment necessary to hoist Dragon out of the water.
Oh, still getting a view from the WB. The airplane flying overhead, it gave us those great views of really our first views of Bob and Doug re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. From up above. You can see the 4 parachutes in the water. We heard those were cut automatically as expected by Dragon. So for now, the crew just standing by. Again, they're going to stay in their suits, in their seats. We're waiting for all these initial checks.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, how else?
Loud and clear as well. Just wanted to verify a quick comm reconfiguration. Thank you.
So essentially what just happened there is they reconfigured.
And Solo, if you can just relay status of the fast boats and the recovery as you get them, we would appreciate it.
You bet. Absolutely, Doug. Wilco.
So what just happened there, you heard comms reconfiguration. That's essentially looping Bob and Doug's communication into the into the recovery team, so that they can hear feedback from Bob and Doug directly as well. Now, we talked a little bit about
SpaceX Endeavor. You can let Ben and James know we're doing pretty good so far.
Okay, we'll let the flight docs know that you're feeling good so far. Thanks for that update.
Really good news there to hear that they're feeling good, and they can let the flight surgeons know that all is well inside Dragon Endeavor.
All right, and it sounds like we do have one of our folks that's on location there with the recovery forces, NASA's Brandy Dean. She's joining us by satellite phone. Brandy, if you can hear me, I mean, what is it like right there in the water? What was it like to watch
Dragon? We're
watch them splash down
for the test objective. So stand by at the console once we get it up and operating. I'll let you know.
Okay, SpaceX copies. We'll be ready for that in just a couple minutes. We should have the go for you in just a moment. Please stand by.
I can hear you, but they're good.
Wow, that was so exciting.
There in the center of your screen. Dragon capsule, waiting for the fast boats to approach and begin the rigging process. And there on the left-hand side of your screen, we can see that second fast boat come into view.
Dragon, SpaceX, we are go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in just under a minute.
Dragon copies. Thank you.
All right, so they're starting to move in. As Kate just said, that first boat's going to go in, sniff around the capsule for any traces of hypergulls. The second one's going to start rounding up the parachutes, which we're getting some really cool views from the WE-57 still flying overhead. Looking down, you can see the parachutes in the water, and the second boat start to gather them up. We'll try one more time real quick. We have NASA's Brandy Dean out with the recovery forces. Brandy, if you can hear me, what was it like to watch this Dragon come down under parachutes?
Oh, it was amazing. I wish everybody could have had my view. Such beautiful stuff. It was a gorgeous day. The water is calm. Really the best weather we could have asked for. And we did. We heard the sonic boom as it made its way back. We were able to find it early on as the parachutes were deploying. So it was very exciting for everybody who was gathered here.
That's incredible. We actually had some questions from people if you'd be able to hear the sonic boom, and we weren't sure. So I'm really glad you just answered that for us. I mean, we talked so much about the weather. You said it looks great. What was it like on the ride out there? Has it just been kind of clear skies and clear seas the whole way?
I'm not sure if you can hear me right now, but I think we're asking about the weather. Weather with clear skies, and there are just a kind of a circle of clouds along the horizon, very low. But we were able to see the parachute far above the clouds and follow it all the way until it splashed down.
All right, well, we're not getting any views on the boat, so what kind of activity is taking place right now? We're able to see the fast boats approaching the capsule. What's everybody doing on the boat to just kind of get everything ready?
The boat's also making its way through the capsule. I can't see it with my rear. I can yeah, but we're getting closer. Everybody's been kind of standing by, holding ready positions for quite a while now. So as soon as the splashdown, you people to just stand and start working on their own activities.
All right, copy that. Well, we're going to keep watching from here. Thanks for calling in, and thanks for being out there with everybody and getting us these great views. It's really incredible. Thanks, Brandy. We hope to get you back in port soon, and we'll talk to you back in Houston.
So there on your screen, camera view change. That is a view coming to us from Go Navigator, the recovery vessel. The two fast boats are out there getting ready to install the rigging equipment required to hoist Dragon out of the water. The other fast boat is actually collecting the parachutes from the water. We definitely want to bring those back on board with us. But shortly here, we should actually see one of the team members crawl up onto the side of the capsule in order to install the rigging, like I mentioned. That particular team member is highly experienced and highly trained. As you can imagine, climbing on top of an oddly shaped thing in the ocean could be a little tricky, so this person has undergone hours and hours of training and certification in order to perform this very important task. There on the right-hand side of your screen, we see the second fast boat approaching. Of course, both of these boats needed to wait for their cue from the water recovery lead in order to approach Dragon after splashdown. Again, that was just to make sure that there weren't any toxic vapors in the air. And now that they got the all clear, we do see them beginning to work on and around the Dragon capsule. So even though the camera's a little shaky, that water looks super, super duper smooth, almost like glass, which is certainly ideal for a water recovery like today.
Yeah, got to remember that this is a view from the main recovery vessel, which was still a few miles away from the splashdown point.
Against SpaceX, we have hypercrawl sweeps and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rigger is on board the vehicle. About 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Copy that. Yeah, we see them walking outside, and good news.
All right, confirmation there that all of those hypergolic vapor tests came out positive, or rather negative, which is a positive thing. So the team was able to approach, and now the crew member that is installing the rigging is on top of the capsule. It's difficult to see there because the slower vessel, the primary recovery ship, is a little further away. But as we heard, it's just a mere 2.5 minutes until they will be hoisted out of the water. I'm sorry, 25 minutes, not 2.5. I misheard that.
Yeah, they're fast, but they're not that fast. We also have been hearing that the secondary boat, which its primary mission in this case is securing those parachutes, they've already got buoys attached to both drogues, and 2 of the 4 mains and already had eyes on the other 2, so they're moving through that work pretty quickly. Again, their primary responsibility getting those parachutes together. The drogues detaching from the spacecraft right before the deployment of the mains automatically detaching immediately as Dragon detected splashdown. All of that happening right per the timeline.
And we've talked a little bit about the hardwired buttons that Bob and Doug have on their seats and in their control displays, and cutting the main chutes is one of those buttons. In the event that they weren't automatically cut after splashdown, Bob and Doug would have had the ability to do so. If the winds were stronger and they caught the parachutes, it could certainly create a condition where the capsule could be moved unintentionally by those dragging parachutes. So definitely want to avoid that. So that's one of the few buttons that are hardwired into the cabin for the crew.
And again, right now we're expecting about 20 minutes for the main recovery vessel, the Go Navigator, to reach Dragon. By that point, all the rigging will be affixed, and then they'll be able to use the A-frame hydraulic lift on the back of the vessel to begin to pull Dragon up out of the water. Bob and Doug did report they're seeing the guys climbing around outside their window on the capsule, getting that rigging affixed. Still doing good from all of their reports. And we're just going to see the vessel continue to close in. It's a little over 1.3 nautical miles still away, but you can see things starting to sharpen up in our view as it does draw in closer.
One thing I didn't get to mention as the sequence events was happening, everything was going so quickly, just before the drogue deployment, the seats automatically rotated to about 26 degrees. And so if you think back to when we saw Bob and Doug while they were still on orbit and during the deorbit burn and all their departure burns, they were actually laying closer to on their backs at the 40-degree position, where essentially they were looking up at the top of Dragon capsule, like their stomachs were facing the top nose cone there. At this point, the seats would have rotated, so they're in a little bit more of an upright position. That's done to ensure that the loads experienced from landing are, doesn't hurt them. So at this point, they are not really laying on their backs in the ocean. They are seated upright a little bit, which would allow them to have a better view of the team working to install the rigging equipment. So at this point, we're at about 22 minutes until Dragon will be lifted onto the recovery vessel. Bob and Doug are still strapped into their seats, kind of like an airplane. They say, do not unbuckle your seatbelt until the captain determines that it's safe to do so. They will remain in their seats throughout the entire recovery process, essentially until it's time to get them out. Like I said, we are expecting to lift Dragon onto the Go Navigator recovery ship in about 21 minutes. And then in 28 minutes, we will be opening that hatch and beginning crew egress, also known as exit.
And we did hear the rigging is pretty much complete, so right as they arrive there at the capsule, the main recovery vessel will be able to begin getting it up out of the water.
So now as the recovery vessel Go Navigator is getting closer to Dragon's position there off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, we're able to see the capsule in a little bit more detail. It is certainly no longer a bright shade of white. Like we said, those external temperatures were reaching up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So the thermal protection systems enable Dragon to return while keeping the internal temperature rather temperate.
And you are seeing a few more boats than expected. The team's currently working with a few private vessels in the area, making sure that they get out of there. And now we see one of the SpaceX fast boats moving in.
So we are being advised that the recovery team is radioing out to the vessels in the water near Crew Dragon to vacate the area so that we're able to extract Bob and Doug safely. Also for the safety of those folks in the area as well, not just Bob and Doug.
Yeah, this is obviously a dynamic operation. One of the first things we do is make sure there aren't essentially poisonous fumes around the capsule, so something like this just really can endanger the whole thing, endanger the crew members and endanger themselves. So the SpaceX team's moving in to try and get them away so they can safely recover the Dragon capsule and get Bob and Doug on deck and safely inside their medical quarters. So we can see them, they're getting a lot closer. We expect about 10 minutes or so until they should be in position. All the rigging has been affixed on the Dragon capsule. And once they arrive, they'll be able to use that hydraulic lift to get Dragon up and out of the water.
So the recovery vessel Go Navigator is getting closer and closer to Dragon Endeavour as it awaits its recovery, or as it awaits to be hoisted out of the Gulf of Mexico. Again, we landed just off the coast of Florida near Pensacola. Maybe next time we shouldn't announce our landing zone. Oh, there we got a shot from our WB-57 plane. It looks like that area has cleared out significantly, so that is good to see. And we're also hearing that all of the parachutes have buoys on them, so also good news as the recovery process continues for SpaceX Demo-2.
Dragon SpaceX for comm reconfig.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Doug, we're about to reconfigure the forward link. We may lose that for about 1 or so minutes, and that should happen shortly.
Copy. Just give us a call back when you think you got it back.
Will do.
So as the main vessel gets closer, it's going to back up and get its hydraulic lift set up right next to the Dragon capsule, still in the water. Bob and Doug still inside, just waiting for that recovery. We should start the hoisting operations in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And then it'll be a pretty quick lift up out of the water using that hydraulic lift into the Dragon nest on the deck of the boat, or the ship rather. And then they'll move it underneath the helipad into essentially the crew recovery area, where they'll have a platform right up to the hatch. They'll be able to open up the hatch. SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one through the door, able to do a quick check-in with Bob and Doug on their status, and then he and the other medical doctors, flight surgeons, and trained technicians will begin to help them out of the capsule.
Yeah, earlier, just after splashdown, we did hear Bob and Doug report that they were feeling good after reentry, so that was relayed to the flight surgeon, and good news to hear. Again, this is a view coming from the WB-57 plane as it is circling the area, and we can see Dragon awaiting to be pulled out of the water. Again, we are anticipating that lift to begin in just under 15 minutes. We're approaching 14 minutes here. And then in 21 minutes, we will have an open hatch.
And you can see the main recovery vessel in the top right there. That's the helipad with the big SpaceX X on top. It's now backing up towards the capsule.
Certainly not to be confused with one of our landing drone ships. There's a live view of Dragon floating in the water there in the background, along with many onlookers. Certainly from a safer distance at this point. This is a live shot coming from Go Navigator, our primary recovery vessel here. So it's Crew Dragon is also accompanied by the fast boats that are helping to bring it in closer. And there you can see a couple of the recovery team members on the deck. And also just behind them, we get our first good view of the nest. Yes, so this is essentially the nest in the background there. Dragon will be hoisted using the hydraulic lift out of the water and into that nest. That nest will then be pulled towards the camera from this view, towards those individuals on that upper deck there. And that's where the
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
Loud and clear, Solo. How us?
Loud and clear as well. And from the video, it looks like the boat is about one length away, about 5 to 10 meters, backing up to you.
Copy that. Thanks for the update.
All right, so good news there. We're getting ready to see Dragon to be lifted out of the water and into the recovery nest. As I was saying, that nest will be pulled towards the camera, towards the upper deck that we saw there, and that's where the medical stretchers will be waiting to assist them into the medical bays for evaluation after capsule egress.
It's already been 25 minutes since they splashed down. It doesn't feel like it.
That was definitely the fastest 25 minutes of the day.
The timeline we were anticipating was for the lifting operations to start within about 30 minutes, so we're pretty much right on the timeline still. That's been a pretty common thing so far today. You can see them with one of the fast boats getting it positioned to start moving out with the additional rigging to affix to the Dragon capsule, where they're going to use this A-frame to pull it up out of the water. And you can see the Dragon nest at the very bottom. It's that circular object with the A1 right on it.
So while this is the first time we are recovering a capsule with crew members on board, the recovery team has been...
And Dragon, just letting you know, we got a couple lines connected, and rigging is in progress.
Copy that, SpaceX. Thank you.
All right there. So just updating the crew that they might feel some momentum as a couple of the rigging lines are attached. There we can actually, there's our first good shot of the individual who is placing that rigging equipment. Again, that's someone that's highly specialized and very well trained for these operations. As I was saying, the recovery team has rehearsed and practiced this with Bob and Doug themselves, actually, in a test capsule, practicing the egress as well as they have practiced the recovery process many times. And actually, through those practice runs, they have effectively cut the recovery period in half from the initial Demo-1 mission. So it's really nice to see that the process itself, after being rehearsed and carefully choreographed, is going super efficiently. Again, safety is the #1 priority, so making sure that only personnel involved in active recovery operations are present on the deck. You may have heard us mention before that there are about 40 people on board today, but we certainly don't want anyone in danger or to fall overboard. That guy intentionally jumped. Speaking of falling overboard.
We're ready. Thank you.
All right, so the crew was just told in the next 30 seconds, they have the lines affixed, so they're going to start lifting the capsule up out of the water. And at this point, the communication we're getting with Dragon is actually being routed through the boat itself at this point. So there we can see the lift. Dragon is out of the water.
Yeah, so
now
now
that A-frame's going to start swinging it back. And it's bound right for that nest at the bottom of your screen.
So there we're getting a better shot of all the points in which Dragon is tethered to the hydraulic lift, ensuring that it isn't swinging freely. And there we can see Dragon Endeavour being carefully set down into the recovery nest on top of Go Navigator.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks and preparing to translate you to the egress platform.
We copy. Thank you.
So for the first time in 2 months, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are on some sort of ground. I guess we can't call it solid ground because it is a ship. However, it is the first time that they are not in space, on a rocket, or bobbing in the ocean.
So now that they're in the nest, they're going to start translating it forward. And Dragon's going to move into essentially the hangar section underneath that helipad and then up to that recovery platform that we saw a little bit earlier. At that point, the spacecraft technicians will work to open up the hatch. As we said previously, it's a manual process with a couple of different attachments you have to engage before the hatch itself can be opened. They'll get it opened, and then SpaceX's Neil Menon will be the first one through the hatchway to check in on Bob and Doug, get their initial health assessment, see if they're ready to move, and then we'll start assisting them out of the capsule and into that medical facility on the boat.
So at this point, the recovery team is doing final securing of the capsule in preparation to actually move the recovery nest into closer to the interior of the ship. It'll actually be in a little bit of a covered deck there. We saw that camera view earlier, looking straight out from the center of the boat. So once Dragon is secured in the nest will be translated then forward and closer to the recovery, closer to the position in which we're able to actually open the hatch. So while Dragon is on board safely, we're not able to do that just yet.
Yeah, they're working to detach some of those lines that were used to hoist it using the A-frame, and we heard that they should be done with that in just a moment, and then we'll start that translation.
So right now we can see the recovery team releasing those securing lines that were used during the lift of the capsule from the water into the nest. So they are releasing those securing lines from the sides, making sure it is secure from the bottom.
And there we see Dragon moving forward.
Look at that. Smooth as a Tesla, I would say. It's really interesting to see those scorching marks now that we get a really nice up-close detail shot of Dragon.
Standing by for the go for side hatch open.
That rounded square there in the center of the capsule is that side hatch, and on either side are those oval windows.
Dragon SpaceX, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Copy, we're ready.
All right, crew got the call. We are go for hatch open. And if you look closely immediately above the hatch, you can see the area where you can see them working in now. That's where those drogue chutes deployed from. The two circles on either side were where the mortars were. The main parachutes now hidden by the platform underneath the side hatch.
So the crew is in the process of removing the side hatch. We can see that Go Navigator is in transit. It is making its way back to the Pensacola Naval Air Station. However, Bob and Doug will get a ride from the recovery vessel via helicopter. So again, we're preparing to open the side hatch, and once that is done, the flight surgeon will pop his head in, do an initial check, see how Bob and Doug are doing.
And Dragon SpaceX, we got a slight delay due to some potential NDO hits near the side hatch.
Copy, Mike. We're standing by.
And so they're still continuing to do kind of those sniffs, so checking for any vapors or anything. So those NDO, it's NO2, nitrogen dioxide, primarily can get detected in the air from the burning of fuel. So they're going to continue to just inspect around the capsule, make sure that it's, again, safe for the crew, safe for the recovery experts before they get this hatch open. But again, moving right along the timeline, it's since they splashed down at 11:48 a.m. Pacific. And so again, they're just pausing the operations for a moment, doing some additional air sampling around the prop system. We still have telemetry being fed from the vehicle, so flight controllers here in Hawthorne able to monitor prop tanks, propulsion tank pressures, and not seeing any issues with those at the moment. So again, just a short pause in the operations as, again, they're just sniffing around the capsule, making sure we don't have any readings that might indicate a fuel leak or anything around the vehicle. They did detect some NDO, some nitrogen dioxide, which is typically a residue that arises from the burning of fuel. So they're continuing to do just a couple of different air readings, grab samples essentially, before they proceed with the hatch opening.
And Dragon SpaceX update, we're still investigating. Looks like we'll be setting up a service section purge. We're working on a ETA for you.
Copy.
In case if you're just joining us, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley have safely returned from the International Space Station. They made an on-time splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida at 11:48 a.m. Pacific, 18:48 a.m. Universal Time. And they have been pulled out of the water and hoisted onto the recovery vessel Go Navigator. And right now the team is just completing, they did an initial check and found that there might be some remnant vapors, which we certainly don't want to be around when we have Bob and Doug coming out of the capsule. So the team is working to purge the service section in preparation for crew egress. Just a little commentary on the hatches that we've been talking about. So while Dragon's top hatch is used to connect to the International Space Station, that's the one that's located under the nose cone, which is currently hidden there at the top of the capsule. This is the side hatch is what is utilized for ingress and egress, both on the launch pad as well as coming up here on the recovery vessel. When the when the capsule is docked to the International Space Station, they will use the forward hatch to exit and enter the capsule. Something to note that once that side hatch is opened, it'll be the first time that Bob and Doug have gotten a breath of fresh air. The first time that they've been able to do so in 2 months since they boarded the Falcon 9 at the start of their mission back on May 30th.
Yeah, with an on-time splashdown, they returned with almost exactly 64 days in space on this mission, just a few minutes shy of that. So I know they're looking forward to it. At a minimum, in a little bit more of a stable condition now that they're on the boat, not in the water. But again, our team's just continuing to step through. They're reporting that they're seeing all of the vapor levels that they initially detected have been dropping, and that service section purge.
Dragon SpaceX, we showed that levels are declining, but are continuing with purge.
Copy.
And in addition, just so you know, we are not seeing any, leak indications or anything like that. These are pretty small levels, but we still need to do the purge at this time.
Okay, copy. Yeah, you're reading our mind, Mike. We were just wondering if you saw any indications of a leak or some depressurization somewhere. But it sounds like it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, that's a good read back, Doug.
So we're just continuing to get a view down right at the hatch of the capsule. They are detecting those very small traces of a couple of the hypergalls. The one we've heard specifically mentioned was NDO or NO3 nitrogen or NO2 nitrogen dioxide. They are at very low levels, obviously not at a very harmful level, as we still have people in close proximity to the capsule. Purge, they're not seeing any indications of a leak in line, as we weren't expecting to get the hatch open until shortly before 60 minutes, at which point we'd be bringing Bob and Doug out. So this service section...
SpaceX, another update. The service section purge should begin in a bit under 5 minutes. Right now we're showing NTO about 2x of our personnel exposure limits, and we're hoping once we start the purge it'll drop down for us.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
And I'm going to have to correct myself. So it's NTO, that's the dinitrogen tetraoxide, and that's one of the hypergolic fuels used inside Dragon for powering those Draco thrusters. So again, the SpaceX engineers detecting levels of NTO. It's dinitrogen tetraoxide. It's one of the hypergolic fuels used inside the Dragon spacecraft. Levels higher than they would like, so they're essentially doing a purge to help dissipate any vapors in and around the service section where those fuel tanks reside in the Dragon capsule. We're expecting that to take within the next 5 minutes or so. We were still expecting the crew out inside of an hour, so still on the timeline or a few minutes ahead, and we should be seeing Bob and Doug. Once we see those levels continue to drop around the capsule, they'll begin to step through the hatch opening process once again.
So right now we're getting ready to purge the service section. This is to make sure that the lingering NTO fumes that the team is detecting get flushed out, essentially. The service section is not the interior cabin where Bob and Doug are. It's actually the part of the capsule that is outside of the place where Bob and Doug are. It's external to the cabin, but it's inside the capsule itself. So you can think of it as the space between the exterior of the Dragon capsule and the interior space where Bob and Doug are.
I think the interior pressure vessel, essentially.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So Bob and Doug are fine. The air that they are breathing is, that nitrox mix that they've been getting throughout the entire duration of today's operations. But it'll be essentially the area below their cabin, completely sealed off from the service section. Yeah, that service section is where there's a lot of telemetry. It's where there are the prop tanks, and we're just making sure that those get aerated so that lingering fumes are swept away.
Yeah, again, they had detected higher levels than they want to see of nitrogen tetroxide. That's one of the two hypergolic fuels used in Dragon, the other one being monomethyl hydrazine. Those two fuels, essentially when thrown together, even without an ignition source, will react. That's what makes them hypergolic fuels. Much simpler, more elegant solution used in a lot of on-orbit maneuvering systems in spacecraft. So again, we're just standing by.
So as you can see on your screen, there is one crew member that has kind of what looks like a...
Dragon SpaceX, don't have a huge update for you. Just letting you know the service section purge is still in work. And we'll try to get you out of there shortly.
Copy.
So as I was saying, two individuals on your screen there, one with a face mask and what looks like a scuba tank there with some clean breathing air. There might be another crew member with the same personal protective equipment or PPE that will come on deck here. That type of equipment, there we go. That's the kind of equipment that is required in order to perform this purge. Again, the NTO is, the fumes from that are toxic. And of course, we want to keep all crew members safe as we prepare the side hatch for opening in order to let
Dragon
Bob and Doug
SpaceX,
egress.
looks like limits are dropping and getting pretty good. We're still continuing with the purge just to be extra sure.
Okay, that sounds good, Mike. Thank you.
All right, so we just heard the call. The limit's continuing to drop on that NTO, that nitrogen tetroxide. So they're just going to continue to monitor those. They're doing a purge, essentially flushing the air around the service section where the tanks for those hypergolic fuels are in Dragon. As Kate was talking about, they're not inside the pressure vessel, the section of the Dragon interior where Bob and Doug and their atmosphere exists. They're essentially outside the pressure vessel, but still inside the outer shell of the Dragon spacecraft. We are just about 52 minutes post splashdown. Again, we're just waiting for them to get good readings on the levels of any hypergol vapors still in existence around the capsule, and then they'll be able to step back in to this hatch opening. We did hear confirmation that they haven't seen any indication of leaks through the telemetry they're still receiving from the Dragon capsule. And so,
Dragon SpaceX, we're going to purge for 1 more minute.
Copy.
there we go, should be 1 more minute. And then if levels have dropped sufficiently, we'll be able to step back in to the hatch opening process.
Bob and Doug will be getting assistance from the recovery teams while exiting Dragon Endeavour. This is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, as returning to a gravity-rich environment can, be a little jarring, wreak havoc with our vestibular system, which is responsible for maintaining balance and motion. Of course, as you've heard us say multiple times earlier, safety is our #1 priority with this operation. So you will see both Bob and Doug helped out of the capsule and assisted to just the few feet over to the medical quarters aboard the boat.
Yeah, if you've ever watched long-duration crews return on a Soyuz, it's a pretty similar process where they're literally carried out of the capsule and immediately placed down into a waiting chair, where they usually get some initial medical checks out there in the field before they're then carried to an inflated medical tent. We don't have a tent, we have quarters, and they're a whole lot closer, so they'll just have a couple of feet to go from the capsule itself into those medical quarters. And then once they're in there, they'll get some initial checkouts from their flight surgeons who are on location on the boat with them. These are the people that have essentially been responsible for their health and well-being throughout their mission, both beforehand, all of their pre-flight data takes, offering them support in the lead up to launch, and then the entire time while on board the International Space Station. And then they're right here with the front line, with the recovery teams, ready to welcome them home. So it's been just about a minute since we heard that last call to the crew. We should be just about done with the purge. We're going to stand by, and hopefully we'll resume these hatch opening operations in just a moment.
Try again, SpaceX, for update.
Go ahead.
Okay, exterior, we're seeing 3 parts per million NTO and 6 parts per billion of MMH. And Nil, however, is asking that you destow your Driggers and take a sample inside the cabin.
Yeah, which detector? What number, Mike?
Yeah, it'll be detectors 2 and 3 in location 14.
Copy.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
All right, so we just got the call out of the current readings of both the NTO, the nitrogen tetroxide, and the monomethyl hydrazine, either in the parts per million or the parts per billion. But just as an extra safety precaution, we heard Anil Menon, the medical authority from SpaceX, on the boat, asking the crew to take out some air detectors that they have inside with them, just to do some quick sampling inside the cabin itself. So again, we've said it before, we'll continue to say it throughout: safety, the top priority with this operation. So the teams are going to be very methodical and make sure that everything is in a good setup, a safe environment, not only for the crew themselves, but also for our recovery forces. But for now, Bob and Doug still inside of a Crew Dragon. We are just 58 minutes post-landing.
SpaceX Dragon with a status.
Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, for NO2 on detector 2, it reads 0.0. And on detector 3, it also reads 0.0 for MMH.
Okay, great news. 0.0 for detectors 2 and 3 for NO2 and MMH. Thank you very much.
That's a good copy.
And so Doug Hurley reporting zeros across the board, no traces of either the NTO or the MMH.
We waited 2 months for them to come back, and I guess we can wait a few minutes more.
Dragon SpaceX for a status update. Okay, so currently our exposure limits are below limits, but the purge is actually doing a pretty good job. We saw NTO go from 3 parts per million down to 1.5 over the last few minutes. So ideally, with a lot of caution, we'd go ahead and let the purge run for a little bit longer, but we want to see how you guys are doing. If you're okay with continuing with the purge versus knock it off and get you guys out of there quickly.
Yeah, we're fine hanging out, Mike. No problem here.
Okay, thanks for that, Doug. We'll keep working the purge to get us down, and thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Yeah, let's just keep everybody safe. No reason to rush.
Yeah, we concur.
Spacecraft Commander Doug Hurley reporting the crew still doing well in Dragon, so they are good to continue to hang out. The medical authority there on the boat recommending as long as the crew is okay and still doing well inside Dragon, they'll just continue with the purge, trying to get those trace readings of any hypergol vapors all the way down to 0. Because again, we're really focused on not only keeping the astronauts safe, but all of the recovery engineers and medical professionals there on the scene as well. So they're going to continue this purge, just dispelling the immediate area around the service section of the Dragon spacecraft. So this is really a series of fuel tanks outside of the pressure vessel, so where Bob and Doug are inside the Dragon spacecraft, which they did some quick readings inside the cabin and had zeros across the board. But they're just continuing to let these levels dissipate, bring it down to 0, and then we'll resume hatch operations. We're just a little over an hour now, an hour and 2 minutes post splashdown.
Yeah, good to hear Bob and Doug report that they're good hanging out, meaning they're feeling all right, and they're pretty comfortable staying inside for just a couple more minutes.
Yeah, they were doing their best prior to leaving of playing up their expected seasickness. So good. It is good to hear that they're doing well still inside the Dragon capsule.
And Dragon SpaceX, we're still seeing good indications from the purge. We're looking to go about another 5 minutes and looking for 0 indications. If at any time you'd like us to speed things up, please let us know.
Oh, we're good. Just keep doing what you're doing. We can wait the 5. Easy.
All right, thanks, Doug.
All right, so we'll settle in at least another 5 minutes while they just continue to disperse any trace remnants of those hypergol fuels around the service section of Dragon before we once again step into the hatch opening. We're gonna stay with this until Bob and Doug are out of the capsule and into their medical quarters.
At this point, Bob and Doug are still strapped into their seats. The seats have actuated away from the position where, I guess, in the orientation in which you see the capsule now. During their during the departure phasing earlier this morning and yesterday, the orientation of the seats were such that essentially Bob and Doug would have been laying on their backs in the orientation where we see Dragon now. Currently, the seats have actuated upward slightly, so they are not completely upright, but they are reclined a little bit, nice and comfy there. But they are able to see in and out of those windows there that we see on either side of the side hatch.
And then once they're able to finish the egress process, getting Bob and Doug out of the capsule, once they're in the medical area, they'll look to start bringing in the helicopter, as both Bob and Doug are going to be flown back to Pensacola via helicopter, getting them to the shore in just a matter of minutes, where a NASA plane is going to be standing by to then load them up and bring them home to Ellington Airfield at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
And Dragon SpaceX, things are still trending well. We're expecting another reading in about 2 minutes, so at 1956, and looking to hopefully egress you guys shortly after that.
Okay, sounds good, bud. Thank you.
In light of one of the social media questions that we were asked earlier, someone asked if Bob and Doug have Netflix available on their heads-up displays there in the capsule, and they've actually been pretty busy throughout this mission, monitoring telemetry and data and checking for timing. And I would say now's about the time that they would certainly want something to watch because, at this point, their only job left to do is get out of the capsule.
Has to be a feeling of just success, though, for those two. I mean, taking the first flight in a brand new spacecraft, we knew as test pilots this is something that was kind of their bread and butter when they were in the military, and definitely something they leapt at the chance for once they became astronauts. And really a pretty flawless flight for Dragon. Obviously, we'll have all of the post-flight review coming up in the next several weeks as we continue to assess all the data that we received throughout the mission and any data still recorded locally on Dragon itself. And we'll be spending the next several weeks going through and assessing the mission and working through the certification process. And we're already targeting the first operational flight, currently pegged for no earlier than late September.
And Dragon SpaceX, we're now planning to stop the purge in 1 minute at about 1957.
Copy. Thank you.
All right, well, with them stopping the purge in about a minute, that means that the levels have gone down to what they were looking for, and then we'll begin to step back into the hatch opening process. And then be able to get Bob and Doug egressing or moving out of the Dragon capsule. They've been in there for a little more than 19 hours at this point since they departed the space station on Saturday. They had a sleep period, 8 hours of rest on the capsule on their way home. They've been up since a little bit earlier this morning, that wake coming about 4:40 a.m. Pacific, so a little more than 8 hours ago.
And Dragon, the purge is now complete. One more Drager check, and then we should proceed with hatch opening.
Okay, good news. Thanks.
That is good news indeed. So confirmation that the purge is complete and that they're just going to do one more test to make sure that all of the fumes of concern are away and that it is safe to open that side hatch and retrieve Bob and Doug. Once again, once that side hatch is open, our flight surgeon will be the first to say hello, get a quick medical checkup, although based on the reports that they've been that the crew have been giving us along the way, it sounds like they're doing great, they're feeling good, and they're pretty comfortable there inside a Crew Dragon.
And Dragon SpaceX, we show 0.4 parts per million on NTO, 18 parts per billion of MMH. That's below limits. We are proceeding with hatch opening.
Okay, great news. Thanks, Mike.
All right, so there's the green light we've been waiting for. In fact, the green light we've been waiting for months at this point. This is our first opportunity to say hello to Bob and Doug, our favorite space dads, as they are now about to egress or exit from Dragon Crew Endeavour. Again, this is the culmination of what has been about a 19-hour journey home, all starting yesterday as they departed the International Space Station. So this hatch will be manually opened, and once doing so, Flight Surgeon Neil Menon will say hello and make sure that they're still doing all right, and then proceed to assist them with exiting the capsule.
And we see the hatch is now open. Hatch being opened at 12:59 p.m. Pacific. Hatch is open.
So right now they're going to put a piece of equipment in there that basically smooths out the edges and makes sure that it is a comfortable exit from the Dragon capsule. Just a little piece of structure there to ensure that the hatch will remain open and that any sharp edges around that side hatch are protected.
The blue suit there, that's one of NASA's flight surgeons for the crew. That's Dr. Stephen Hart. And that hatch open coming at 12:59 p.m. Pacific. That's 19:59 Universal Time, or GMT.
So once again, the SpaceX recovery team is now assisting NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to exit the spacecraft.
Sorry, we got the hatch open just about 2 minutes ago. We paused for a little while as they were just detecting some trace amounts of some of the hypergol fuels. So we executed a series of purges. And then once those were down back in acceptable limits, we were able to then start with the egress.
So there we see a stretcher on deck. This is normal. This is part of the standard recovery procedure. And it is just simply to ensure Bob and Doug remain safe. Like we said, readjusting to gravity can be a little challenging. Dizziness can often occur, especially when you're on a boat.
SpaceX Dragon, yep.
So this stretcher will just be used to, as standard procedure to make sure that the astronauts make it over to the medical tent as easily and as comfortably as possible.
Yeah, as we discussed, the reintroduction to gravity from microgravity can be a bit jarring, especially on our vestibular system, so the stuff responsible for our balance. And as they are on a ship underway, we just want to make sure we're taking every possible precaution to ensure that their arrival is safe and free from any injury now that they are home. They're working to get a few of the items from the seats out of the way first before they begin extracting our crew members. They'll be coming out one at a time.
As we saw during the ascent portion of this mission, there is enough room inside the capsule for them to do a backflip in microgravity. However, considering there's a couple folks in there right now from the recovery team.
Check.
Got you loud and clear.
Quick comm check there between Dragon and Mission Control
And
here.
Solo from the PLC, I just wanted to thank you guys for bringing us home safe before I disembarked from ship Endeavour. I'm sure Doug will have some good words for you guys as well. But thank you for doing the most difficult parts and the most important parts of human spaceflight, getting us into orbit and bringing us home safely. Thank you again for the good ship Endeavour.
Thank you, Bob, for those awesome words. It's absolutely been an honor and a pleasure to work with you from the entire SpaceX team. It's been awesome.
Some initial words from NASA astronaut Bob Behnken. He's in the pilot seat, so you've heard him refer to himself as PLT. We're still standing by for our crew members to begin making their way out of the Crew Dragon spacecraft. And again, they're going to get some assistance just a couple of feet to the medical quarters on board the ship, where they're going to be able to get out of their suits that they've been wearing for all of the final dynamic phases of the separation events, deorbit burn, reentry, splashing down just a little over an hour ago at 11:48 p.m. or a.m. Pacific time.
Again, the recovery team.
SpaceX Dragon from the commander.
Go for SpaceX.
Here we have our first view of Doug
Mike,
Hurley.
I just would like to sort of reiterate what Bob said and add my thanks to everybody over the last several years that's either worked in Hawthorne, McGregor, or down at Kennedy Space Center. Anybody who's touched Endeavour, you should take a moment to just cherish this day, especially given all the things that have happened this year. We certainly can't thank you enough. Our families can't thank you enough. And just proud to be a small part of this whole effort to get a company people to and from the space station today and celebrate with each other. And we'll talk to you soon, hopefully in person.
Thanks so much, Doug, and you're welcome, and thank you so much for those kind words. And we all wish you a safe journey home and a happy reunion with your family soon, and we look forward to seeing you in person as well.
Some really nice words there from Bob Behnken.
Mikey.
There on your screen, we saw NASA astronaut Doug Hurley egressing or exiting from the capsule. It might have been hard to see on your screen there, but we got a thumbs up indicating that things are going well. Sorry, excuse me, I mixed up my positions there. Yeah, those words were from Doug, and we have Bob that just came out first.
Yeah, so Bob Behnken, the pilot, the Joint Operations Commander for this mission, out of the capsule now. So he's making his way over to the medical area, and now they're going to work to get Doug Hurley out next.
I think I saw a smile on Bob's face.
He was a thumbs up all the way. As they've been giving us some regular status updates from inside the capsule, they've been feeling really good. And so now we're just standing by for our spacecraft commander, Doug Hurley, to make his way out into the fresh air for the first time in 64 days. All right, so they're getting set up, and we should see spacecraft commander Doug Hurley making his way out of the capsule. And it looks like we've got him out. We've got him seated. And there we go, another thumbs up. We've got some applause here.
And as you can see in Mission Control, a standing ovation for a job well done all around.
Yeah, our crew members, Bob and Doug, are now safely back home on Earth, and they're going to get checked out now by the NASA medical team. They're going straight into the medical quarters on board the ship. That'll be their first stop on planet Earth, and then they're going to be making their way up into a helicopter and then heading back to dry land. So once they're complete, the team's going to prepare Dragon itself, and they're going to begin taking it back to shore. But just it's been an incredible, incredible mission. This all kicked off just 2 months ago on May 30th from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We had a successful liftoff. We had to dodge around some weather. It was suspenseful, clearing up the last possible moment. They had a flawless ride to orbit, a 19-hour journey to the International Space Station, where they just spent 62 days on board, 64 total days in space. They were Expedition 63 crew members doing science experiments, spacewalks, repairs, everything on board the orbiting laboratory.
Their journey home began yesterday when they closed the hatch to Dragon and undocked hours later at 4:35 p.m. Pacific. After 4 successful departure burns and a and prepare Dragon Endeavour for its lift onto the recovery vessel. And just a little less than an hour following splashdown, we saw Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley make their way, thumbs up, out of Dragon and into the recovery ship's medical facilities, safe and sound.
Yeah, we just got word that the helicopter itself should be landing soon, so that'll be their next step in their journey. They'll catch a short flight back to shore, where they're going to transfer to a waiting NASA plane for another short flight back over to Houston. They're going to be reunited with their families, and that's going to bring an end to this historic flight. It's really been an honor and a privilege to share this journey with all of you as we open up this new era in human space flight. But I mean, just as we close the book on this mission, we're already counting down the days to the next crewed Dragon flight.
Yeah, absolutely. SpaceX and NASA will now begin the process of reviewing data and telemetry from this successful demonstration mission
Appreciate
to prepare us for Crew 1, which is currently targeted to launch no earlier
well, anyway, we had lost our feed there for a while.
SpaceX's first operational flight, flying a full crew of 4 astronauts, including our first from Japan.
I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for being part of our live stream.
It has been an incredible honor and joy to share this mission with
can you hear me now?
And the teams from SpaceX and NASA have worked so hard to get here
hold on.
and return this capability to flight.
All right, still working the live stream mechanics here. How does that look? Sound okay? Maybe a little bit. All right, let's we'll go with that and assume that. All right, here we go. Well, anyway, I want to thank you all very much for participating in this historic conclusion of the Crew Dragon mission. It certainly reminded me of back when I recall watching Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, and just the excitement, the anticipation of how this whole thing was going to play out. And it was just so thankful that prayers were answered, that this whole thing worked out so well. Clearly they figured out a couple of things they need to work on, as in security around the landing area, and also try to figure out why it took so long to purge those gases. But I'm sure they'll get the engineers on it and fix it up. So anyway, we look forward to future live stream events with you. Please keep checking our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to our email list, go to our website and you can do that there. And we will find a way to keep you engaged. We really enjoy doing this kind of thing. We hope to be able to even do something during the Perseid meteor shower. Even though we can't have people up here at this point due to physical distancing guidelines, it will be. We'll find a way to make it an event for us anyway online. So anyway, thanks again for joining us. Have a great afternoon, and as I said, hopefully in sometime in the future we can get Doug to come back here to the southern tier, and we can find a way to celebrate his mission and everything else. So that so again, thanks so much for being part of it, and we'll see you soon. And keep looking up and dreaming big.